Are you recording? Okay, so listen, I want to apologize to anybody who tried to get into the live stream. We're having some technical difficulties tonight. So I think what we're going to do is move ahead with the workshop since there's no public participation anyway. And this will be up on the town's Facebook and website tomorrow. We'll put it up. So tonight is our March 2021 workshop meeting. We have with us tonight the town board, Andrew Riegelbaum, Steve Moreau, Stephen Vedetti, Sylvia Santiago. We have the town clerk who's with us, and the receiver of taxes, Susan Scheibel, and Kelly Legler, the town clerk. And also with us is Mike Weeks, the engineer, John Agito, who is from Camo Pollution, handles our water and sewer issues in town, and Dave Zagon, the town attorney. We also have from the controller's office tonight, we have Jack Finnegan and Doreen Scheibel. And the reason I asked them to be here was regarding item number 1, which is we're going to call a public hearing to be held in April regarding upgrade and expansion of the sewer treatment plant, which is down on Caesars Lane. And it's built in 1975. And the town's been kicking the can down the road for many years about an upgrade. And due to the explosion of population in the Windsor, we need to expand it. So it's a costly undertaking. And I just asked Jack Finnegan and Doreen to be with us tonight to kind of give us a little overview of what the expense will be for this upgrade and expansion. So Jack, I'll turn it over to you and Doreen for a minute to just give us some idea to board members and the public as to what the ramifications this will be.
All right. Well, we have before you a public notice for proposed capital improvement project for $59.1 million for the wastewater treatment plant, and that includes $3.5 million that was previously authorized by the town board, and we're going to roll that $3.5 million into the $59.1 million capital improvement bond. And that simply has to do with moving it there. It allows us to have a longer term bond. I just want to make one note though, that in addition to the wastewater treatment plant costing $59.1 million, there is a chlorination, dechlorination system that is now currently being constructed. It goes along with the WWTP, and that's an additional, additional $3 million for that. So even though the WWTP is $59.1 million, there's a companion project that's previously been authorized for $3 million for the dechlor plant. The impact, because it's obviously a large amount of money, to the typical household is going to be an additional 100, for the wastewater treatment plant portion only, an additional 100, when all is said and done, when all the bonds are issued, the plant's done, what's the final outcome? It's going to be an additional $143, the wastewater treatment plant, and an additional $7 to take care of the dechlor system. So the typical household there, and they're 10 points at the household, is they're going to see about an additional $150 of sewer debt service on their property tax bill every year. And obviously it's a significant amount, but right now they pay for debt service about $1.50.
$1.35 per year for the typical household.
So when all is said and done, it's going to go up by about $150 just for the debt service. In addition to that, there's always the additional sewer O&M, just like for the general fund, the highway. The sewer O&M is $184 a year. $168 a year. $168 a year. So the impact is you got basically a $62 million plant, and it's going to cost the typical household about $150 to $151 more per year to finance the plant. That's in a nutshell. That's what the cost is.
Okay. Now, that would be for 30 years, right, Jack?
Well, right now, it'll be, well, two things. For the wastewater treatment plant, we have a 30-year bond on that. Right now, because we did the chlor dechlor a little earlier, we have a 20-year life on it. What we can do is simply change that life to another town board of authorization later on and make that change the term to a 30
The
year. So
PPU from 20 to 30 years.
that's just the periodic usefulness of it.
Period of probable usefulness.
So we can take care of that. But why bother, don't worry about that now. That's just technical. We'll take care of that. We need to go to the board, then we go to the board. And also you had mentioned a little bit earlier on this year, we have a 30-year life on it, and that's good. You were wondering whether or not we could extend it, and we can make it a longer life, but we really haven't analyzed that. We could go up to 40 years by the time we would do that, we could only go up to about maybe 37 years because we got to pay part of it off. So right now it's a 30-year bond. We'd make some scenarios, see what if we made it a 35-year, would it make much of a difference? Not much. But anyway, we got a 30-year to 20-year. Don't worry about the 20-year. We'll make it a 30-year. So it'll be for 30 years. Then we'll just have to determine how we want to finance. I don't think we're going to issue one bond for 60 million. We're going to see how that cash flow is going to go, and then we'll issue a bond, and then probably a final bond. But we'll want to talk to some people. Plus, it is 30 years. It's a lot of money, and we have no idea in what the interest rates are going to be in another 1 or 2 years. So we'll ask some of the outside experts, what do they think?
Okay, so there's 24 sewer districts in town. Not everybody is in a sewer district, so this would only affect those folks who are in a sewer district. And I think the number of users is around 6,000. So they would all be notified through the mail at some point in time. I think it's worth noting that we are under the gun from the Department of Environmental Conservation. They have been chasing us around for probably a number of years now to get something done here. And they've finally kind of reached the end of the rope. So I'm not too sure what other options there are. But to do this, I mean, from 1975, you can imagine what the shape of the plant is in. So this is just some information for everyone. And we'll call for public hearing. We'll have the public hearing in April. And then I would hope and suspect that some people may chime in. And then the town board can make a decision as to what direction they want to go. But I would just say that we are really under the gun from DEC. Mike, you want to say something about that, Mike Weeks? Anything?
Sure. I can say as little or as much as you want. I put together a little timeline of kind of, what prompted this evaluation and when we started it and how we got to where we are today. I can go through that if you'd like, or I can just answer some questions.
Well, let's ask any board members want to ask something, or they'd rather just kind of take a look at it and then come back with the public hearings. Up to them.
Yeah, I just got a question, George. Is there an actual breakdown what it's going to cost each district for the 59 million? Because I'd imagine each district's not the same, correct?
Right. Susan has that, and I thought
there is a breakdown. I'm going to say last November, the town board approved a map plan and report that our office prepared. And what that map plan and report does is it identifies the improvements and what the cost of those improvements are going to be. And included in that map plan and report are all of the calculations that Jack and Doreen did that shows each sewer district what their current costs are and what the additional costs will be based on the bond amount. So that's all part of that document. But the costs generally, maybe they're off by a little bit. Jack and Doreen can interrupt me here if I'm wrong, but generally speaking, the costs are going to be the same for everybody because these are and basically end of pipe, if you will. This is the wastewater treatment plant. It affects everybody the same. It's not like we're doing improvements in a single sewer district where, you know, it might affect one district and not the other. So this kind of affects everybody equally.
All right, so the letter, I'm assuming going out to the people it's gonna be a $150 increase for everybody the same. However, each sewer district's gonna be contributing different amounts, I assume, right? To the 59 million? So,
Well, yeah, I guess
Okay.
the overall sewer districts, the numbers specific to the sewer district might be different, but the numbers to the actual, to a
Homeowners, the same.
family home is going to be
The
relatively
same.
similar.
Okay.
Steve, if you want to take a look, we have an order calling for a public notice that was given to us prepared for and given to us by bond counsel. It's attached to the motion. I can get you a copy if you want. That
Okay.
breaks
That's
down
fine.
the
And
amounts
I also,
per district. But
All right, that's fine. Thank you.
and any of the board members that would like a copy of the map plan report that was approved last year, I'm happy to distribute those if you'd like them. Whether you want a hard copy in your mailbox or an email, whichever you'd prefer.
Mike, you want to speak a little bit about DEC, what they've been requiring us to do?
Sure. So I'll try to make this brief.
Thank you.
So back in August of 2017, the town received a new draft speedies permit. So the speedies permit is essentially what allows the wastewater discharge of Caesar's Lane. And that specifies what those effluent parameters of the discharge need to meet from an environmental standpoint. So that was received in 2017. There were new permit items in that permit that required us to evaluate if the existing treatment plant would be able to meet those new permit limits. So there was ammonia, which went from a monitoring permit requirement to now an actual having an increased limit, and then also limits for two other compounds, total unchlorinated phenols and bis-2 phthalate. So the schedule of compliance, so what they do when they issue these new permit limits is they give the town what they call a schedule of compliance. So they'll give you time to evaluate, and then time to get plans approved, and then time to construct those improvements to bring the plant into compliance. So when we received that, we felt that the timeline that they gave us was not adequate. So we immediately requested appealed the permit and requested a hearing, which prompted them to come to the table, and we started talking about changes to which they were amenable to. So we ultimately received January 8th in 2018, we received a new permit with a new schedule of compliance, basically the same permit limits, but extended the schedule of compliance to what we thought was reasonable. So that permit then became effective again January 8th, 2018. That permit expires August 31st, 2022. So we started reviewing what we felt might be necessary at the plant to meet these new permit requirements, and what we thought might be relatively simple turned in not to be the case. Meeting the ammonia limits became obvious that some of the existing components of the plant are undersized already, and to be able to on paper to be able to meet the effluent limits for ammonia was going to be very difficult, and we also were struggling a little bit with how we were going to meet these limits for the total unchlorinated phenols and the bis-2 phthalate. So that resulted in, some of you may recall, that resulted in a kind of a schematic plan and a schematic cost estimate that we prepared for what was going to be involved in meeting those requirements, as well as an expansion of the plant to 7 MGD. That was about a $44 million price tag. In addition to that, we've been kind of a parallel track, we've been dealing with the outfall to the plant. Right now, the sewage plant outfall actually runs through the Moodna estuary all the way out down close to the Tom Cornwall's plant. And we have a consent order to repair that dates back to Hurricane Irene. There was that flood event caused damage to the outfall. And in order to repair the outfall, there's a number of environmental concerns that we've been struggling with back and forth with DEC over many years. And what we decided made the most sense was to relocate that outfall right to the wastewater plant. And in doing so, we received new permit limits from DEC, and those new permit limits have even stricter outfall requirements than the plant has now. So this is now I'm about, let's see, I am now like October 19, I'm going to say, where we got these new effluent limits. And they requested that we do a mixing analysis to verify these effluent limits. So that occurred through the fall of 19 into the spring of 20. And we, through discussions internally, we decided that at 8 million gallon a day design flow at the plant is probably more in line given the current flows we have, given the outstanding allocations to projects that are either approved or in front of the planning board. So that kind of brings us to today. The new effluent limits that we received based on the outfall location require additional enhanced treatment. They're basically what they call intermittent stream standards. So that has caused additional improvements that would be necessary at the plant, really to the point where, given the limited space there at the wastewater plant and now the required treatment level, we're going to be not entirely, but almost entirely constructing a brand new wastewater plant there. And that brings us to this $59 million price tag. So that's my sorry it took longer maybe than I thought it was gonna, but that's my
okay.
timeline.
It's been going on for a while, and I think that maybe we are at the push comes to shove point here. So I think that maybe the board members want to just kind of maybe do a little looking at it this month, and we'll have the public hearing. We'll see what the public has to say, and then I think we need to make a decision on this. Okay, so thanks for that, Mike.
Sure.
The next item on the agenda is maybe back in November or December last year, Steve Bedetti gave me the name of a guy who contacted him and wanted to buy some water from the town, by the name of Spindler. And then I began to have conversations with Mr. Spindler over a 3 or 4 month period. We talked about where he wanted to buy water from the town. And then had different options. He was going to go to the Kroll well, he was going to go to Butterhill well, and now he's kind of renting a piece of property on Route 94. That may be where he wants to take the water from, but there's an issue. He needs to get an easement in order to run the pipe out. John Agito has spent some time with him, and just letting you know that this is kicking around. But the ball is now in his court. He's going to have to get, not him, it'll be the landlord, going to have to get some kind of easement across somebody's property to reach one of our water mains. So I don't know where this is going. He was buying water from Washingtonville, and they jacked the price up too high for him, and he approached us. And in 3 months, we still haven't resolved this. But I don't know if I ever mentioned it to you, but that's kicking around. We've had a lot of issues in the Butterhill wells. Had a lot of damage down there that occurred in a very short period of time. They're not very old, the wells and the pumps, and there's just been a lot of damage. And I've kind of sent some things around. If you read them, you read them. But I just wanted John Nagito, who's with us tonight, to just give us a little overview of what's been going on down with those 3 wells down at Forge Hill Road. John?
Okay. There are 3 production wells that feed water to the main treatment plant. Production well number 1 is currently offline, and that well pump had failed several months back. And when it was taken apart, it was analyzed to look at the cause of the failure, and it was felt that maybe the well was throttled back to the point where that well was not pumping at its ideal point, and subsequently caused some bearing damage to that well pump. The well pump was pulled. It was evaluated, and it was determined that the best course of action going forward was to install a different style pump that could produce roughly the same amount as the original pump was designed to produce. And that was approved. And today, as a matter of fact, that new well pump, which is a submersible well pump, is being installed. The electrical work is going to follow. That's some things that Mike and I are working out with his electrical engineer. Because it's a different style pump, it doesn't exactly plug in the same way that the original pump was hooked up. So there are some modifications that have to be made to that. So, but within the next several weeks, that well pump should be back up and running and producing somewhere in the neighborhood of that 1,000 gallons per minute. Production well number 2 was originally rated to produce 1,684 gallons per minute. From the very start, it was felt that was kind of optimistic, that well pump really was only producing about 1,300 to 1,400 gallons per minute at the most. That well pump was changed. It was replaced with a smaller column shaft several months back, and the pump was and the well column was cleaned. And following that, a pump test was done by Frank Getchell from WSP to determine if he could give a reason for the reduced output of the pump. He provided a report, which I don't think that Mike or I were really satisfied with his conclusions. But currently, as a result of the GAC system, that well pump has been throttled back to the point where it's pumping about 1,150 gallons per minute. And at that flow rate, it's been performing pretty well. The third production well, PW3, is our highest producing well pump. Again, as a result of the limited capacity that we can send to the new GAC system, that well pump is delivering right around 1,500 gallons per minute, and that's been our primary producing well pump. And we've had no issues with that pump. We have had some problems with our distribution pumps and motors. There are 4 distribution pumps and motors, and the distribution pump is what pumps the water from the Butter Hill plant all the way up the hill, all the way to the new tank at the Riley Road filter plant. and we've had a pump failure, and we've had a motor failure it was pump number 3 had failed, and we had a bearing failure on motor number 2. Both of those have been removed and sent out to an authorized pump and motor repair shop from the manufacturer. And I'm waiting to hear back. Probably in the next few weeks, we should be getting a timeline on reinstalling those rebuilt pumps and motors. So that's where we're at with the pump issues. We did have recently a compressor failure on the dehumidifier system at the plant, and that was replaced under warranty. And at this point, the distribution pumps are really the main outstanding issue as far as the plant goes.
Okay, so I've sent
Any questions?
many of the, go ahead. No, I was just going to make a point. I've sent many of the memos that I got from John DeGito and Mike Weeks to the town board members. And Dave and I have always been wondering, like, what's under warranty, what's not under warranty. It's not that old. So there's some problems that I've been battling with this thing since day one. So I just want the board members to be aware that there are some issues down here that I think maybe it didn't get off to a good start. So right now, I think we're pretty much under control, and we know what's going on. But I'm hoping that the future that we don't have these reoccurring issues. So I just wanted everybody to know that I'm battling this thing since I walked in the door.
John,
Anybody?
yeah, John, just
Yes.
one question. Well, pump number 3, I forget. You're saying it's doing 1,500 per minute. Is that what it's rated at, or can it do more?
That's rated at 1,800 gallons per minute, and
Okay.
that is throttled back through a flow control valve, Steve, because when the GAC system was installed, the maximum capacity of the GAC
2 million?
is 1,500 gallons a minute.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thanks, John. Just for the public, I mean, everybody knows we're going back on the Catskill Aqueduct. We are back on the Catskill Aqueduct, but we cannot abandon these wells. They are the town's backup water supply, and we're also under contract to supply water to the town of Newburgh when the Delaware Aqueduct shuts down. So it's not simply a matter of, okay, let's shut them down and walk away. That's something we cannot do. All right.
Right.
Next item
As you know,
Go ahead.
we just recently had the Catskill Aqueduct turned back on after being off for 10 weeks, and in 3 weeks it's going to be off for another 5 days.
And then it's off again in October, isn't it? Someplace out there?
And then in October it is scheduled for another 10-week shutdown in 2021, going into the beginning of 2022. And then at that point, the following October, which would be October of 2022, would be the schedule for the Delaware Aqueduct shutdown, which could be upwards of 6 months or so. And that is the point where the town of New Windsor will be relied upon by the town of Newburgh to supply water while the Delaware Aqueduct is offline.
So, yeah, just as a side there, that plant on Forge Hill Road, it's about $32 million. We got $12 million from the city of New York. To get that, we had to commit to and supply the water town, but we bonded $20 million for that. So it's not like that was free. So that's another debt that's been piled on the taxpayers. Okay. Next item on the agenda is another thing that I've been battling with since I walked in the door. This water meter replacement project. And we have whittled it down now to where we're probably getting to, there's a select group that doesn't want the meters for a myriad of reasons. Some thinks that it will affect their health. Some don't think they can put it on a house or in their house for aesthetics. And there's some many other reasons. But now we're at the point where what action will the town take against those residents who don't want the meter? So maybe Dave, you want to make a little presentation here?
Sure. So, we anticipated that there would be, some pushback from some of the residents. And in order to deal with that, a couple of months back, perhaps you'll recall, we amended the town code, the water section of the town code, to try and deal with those people, convince them, if you will, to allow us to replace their water meters with the smart water meters that are currently being installed throughout town. I believe, Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at somewhere around 80% or so of the residents have agreed to and have actually had their meters replaced at this point. We got about 20% to go. I'm not sure what portion of that are just folks that are refusing to do so, as opposed to some issues that might be able to get resolved in terms of just difficulty in accessing the water meters and things of that nature. But for those people who ultimately are going to refuse, we, as I said, amended the town code to allow for a surcharge to be imposed on their bills. The surcharge is up to double the amount of their water bill, and it's to be set, or the amount ultimately is to be set by resolution by the town board. So given that we're coming up on the time where I'd like to send a letter to these people advising them of exactly what the penalties will be, I need the town board to think about and discuss exactly what type of penalty it is that they'd like to impose, whether or not you want to impose a fee or surcharge that will be actually twice the amount of their bills, or you want to impose some sort of set dollar fee or percent of the bill, something along those lines. But ultimately, when you reach a decision, we'll draft a resolution. We'll take the resolution up, pass the resolution, and I will then send a letter to the town residents who are refusing or haven't done so yet in terms of the replacement, to let them know, like I said, exactly what it is that they face. And hopefully that'll get at least the majority to allow us to come in and replace them. There are probably going to be still those that don't do so, but we'll then have the authority to go ahead and fine them whatever the amount the resolution calls for.
Okay,
Dave,
thanks.
just for the town board's info, Dave's numbers were percentages were pretty accurate. I'll just give you a quick rundown of the numbers. So the contract called for roughly 5,500 meters to be installed, replaced. To date, we've installed approximately 4,500 of those meters, which leaves about 1,000 meters left. Of those 1,000, we have 230 or so that are on what we have called an incomplete list. And that means the tech went to the house, attempted to install the meter, and for some reason couldn't. Either it was leaky plumbing, the meter was inaccessible, they couldn't find the meter. So, there's 230 of those. So there was a willing, at least initially, there was a willing resident made the appointment, and then we encountered a problem. Some of those are on the town to resolve. Some of those are still on the contractor to resolve. And then we have 717 that have not been installed at all. Of those 717, we have about 73 that we do not have good information for, meaning the addresses that our contractor has sent notices to have been returned. I believe the last round of those were actually hand delivered, so hopefully they've received them. And then there's about 644 that have presumably received the notice. It hasn't been returned to the town, and they've received 3 of those notices, and have just made no effort to return a phone call or go online to set up the appointment. So,
Mike, of these 1,000, do you have a breakdown of houses, businesses, and so on, or no?
oh sure, probably Sue or certainly the contractor has the list of who those 1,000 people are, or at least the addresses of those 1,000. Sure.
Okay, listen, I would say for me, I would think doubling the bill. It doesn't matter where the addresses are. They're not compliant. They need to comply. So I've had many conversations with Susan about how do we get them to comply? We've sent them letters. We've done, I think, everything that we can possibly do. So I'm saying that for me, if push comes to shove, then we have to say something as drastic as, if you're not going to do it, then we're going to double your bill. And it just escapes me. Susan, what other options are there? Did we talk about anything else? I just don't remember.
No, I think that would probably be the best option because it's the fair option to all the people that have cooperated with us. And, granted, a bunch of them are getting higher bills, but it's because we had the majority of the town's meters were absolutely failing. The bulk of the meters in the town were 30 plus years old, as old as 70 years. So they were reading a very, very small percentage of the water that was going through them. A lot of those people conformed and, they're paying their share now. And now it's down to these that just are they're just ignoring us at this point. If they conform, if they get this double and then they say, okay, they bow down, they conform, well, there's no reason that we couldn't reverse that double charge out and put them back to a normal charge as long as they join in with the program.
Yeah, okay, good point.
To Sue's point, the statute actually does allow for the town supervisor to waive the surcharge for good cause shown. So
I was going to say, Susan and sometimes will bring something to me and we'll discuss it, and it looks like there should be some waiving of something. So it's not that we never do that, but I think the point that she made is very good. You got, 4,500 people playing, and the other 1,000 like, no, we're not going to play. Everybody has to play.
Exactly.
So I
George,
think,
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you don't pay your water bill, doesn't it automatically go to your tax bill?
It does.
And what's the timing on that? Because even if you have someone that doesn't want to pay, eventually it's just going to roll to their tax bill anyway, right?
As Susan explained it better than me.
Mid-October, whatever balance is sitting on a water account is wiped out and added to their very next property tax bill every year.
Yeah. So listen, that's I guess maybe that's an option, but then it's not helping us get the meter in place either. So listen, obviously what I'm saying is I think doubling the bill is a good idea. So I guess the other 4 board members need to think about what they think it should be, and we can talk about it in the April workshop. But I think we really need to kind of get this finished. I mean, I had tried desperately to find out who was in charge of this when it started. It started way back in 17 or 18, and then somebody said something happened in 14. So the best I could figure out, at some point in 18 or so, Colin Schmidt, chief of staff, seemed to be in charge of all the water and sewer issues. And then this executive assistant to the supervisor came along, McGee, and he was in charge. And then there it was, and here I am. So at this point, I'm going to say that Mike Weeks, you're in charge. But I will take care of the phone calls like I do, people complaining, and explain to them why we're doing what we're doing. But there's definitely a sense of fairness here. If 85% of the people, 80% of the people are doing it, then you got to do it. So the board members kind of think about that, and whatever you come up with next time, obviously we'll take a little informal poll. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Just a quick point. I know, because as a real estate broker, I go into houses and set up the change outs when there's a closing. It's a great way that the town is put. You don't get your final water and sewer for a closing unless you schedule the switch out, which is great because it stops closing. So anybody selling is more than forced to change it. But I can tell you, I've seen the meters, and I know there's a lot of historical evidence showing that there's a ton of, I don't know a ton, but the old meters are made with lead. So there's a part of this where, it's a public safety thing, where you're taking something that's basically putting lead into the water and removing it. So maybe they'd want to hear that and get a little more prone to want to change it out.
Sue, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Of the 1,000, I know we sent out a bunch of letters, and some people are not. I'm sure George has fielded some phone calls, but have we actually talked to every one of these customers that are just refusing through letters through VEPO?
That is Beppo. I guess Mike would know better on this. Beppo sent
there's
3 letters, and they've done knocking on doors and phone calls.
What about somebody from like the town going to them now and saying, I don't know, is that too much work, Mike, or something we can?
Well, so the contract that was awarded required the contractor to make a certain number of efforts, and it was basically required them to do 3 written notices. And obviously it's in the contractor's best interest to get these things assigned, because then, that's how they make their money, by doing the install. So they have a calling service, so where they have good phone numbers, they have made numerous phone calls. Where they have good email addresses, they've sent emails. They pre-COVID were putting door knockers on doors. I don't believe they've been doing the door knockers since COVID. But they, at this point, we're in the process of kind of verifying that the contractor has done all their due diligence. But I believe they've, if they haven't done it all, they've done a pretty good job of doing whatever they can to try and get these appointments made. To your point, that's, that would be for the board to discuss, I guess, if you want to have town employee, we're 1,000 accounts is still a lot of accounts, right? It's not like it's 100.
I get it, but I'm assuming that I know we can put little messages on bills. I'm assuming those 1,000 people, we can put a little message on their bill for the next one saying,
I think that was done. I think that was done on the last bill, right? So you had a notice.
We put COVID hours and stuff like that on December bill and this bill. And that would be a good one to run on the June bill that's coming out.
We have sent a series of letters over. How many letters we sent out, Susan? 2, 3?
3.
3. So, at some point in time, Stephen,
no, I don't.
I have a file in my office of people who I've talked to who don't want the meters. And if you're in here, you want to take a look at it, there's some really unique reasons why they don't want the meters.
I don't disagree. I figured since we're billing anyway, maybe we can just throw a little another touch on it. So we tried every avenue. That's all.
It can't hurt, but I think we are probably down to the hardcore people. The only good excuse that I kind of have some sympathy is those people who don't want anybody in the house because of COVID. There's certainly some understanding on my part on that. But I just want you guys to think about it, and we'll talk about it in April and see. I think the question here is, what's the penalty for not doing it? All right, so I'll put it back on the April workshop, and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, just one quick note. I've got all the numbers broken down. I've got five incompletes that are labeled due to COVID, and I've got 19 just flat refusals. So the majority of these are not like people have said absolutely not. They've just not responded.
No, and then there's the group that are just completely ignoring it.
Yeah. for whatever reason. So we don't know because they ignore us. But I have a number of calls from people giving me reasons why they can't, some with long emails. So we'll have to kind of make a decision on this. It just can't go on much longer. Okay. That being said, the next item on the agenda is just 930 Raz Avenue, which is the building that the ARC is in with the special needs kids. And when I walked in the door in January of 2020, first week, Jack Finnegan said to me, the government wants $750,000 back from us. I said, really? Why? Well, I guess we were supposed to have a law enforcement building, and all of a sudden, we put an education building in there. And we were collecting $15,000 a month for X amount of years, and they wanted all that money back. So I reached out to them, called them. They came in, two guys from the government. We're here to help you. And we went around and around, and I just got here. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to do this and do that. So they agreed to waive the $750,000 at the very first meeting, which I took a deep breath on because we really would be strapped to pay them that $750, even though we took it in. Maybe with some maintenance work, and we did, we probably could have got it down to 600 and change. But in any event, for all of 2020, we collected the rent of $15,000 a month. So that was $180,000 that we took in. And then in December, they really started to hold our feet to the fire about the building. So I had asked, they had asked for some kind of contract that we would put the money, the $15,000 a month, into escrow, which Jack Finnegan has done. So we're now holding all of 2021 money in escrow. So there's some issue with, they want to sell the building. We thought maybe Simone Group may be the person to buy the building. So Dave's been going back and forth with one of these gentlemen about what the memorandum of understanding or the contract will say. And Dave, you want to just kind of just give the latest update, which I think came in today or yesterday, Friday?
Sure. Basically, the last conversation we had, we got together for a phone conference with ARC and with GSA. That's the agency that oversees the properties that we obtained from the government and who determined that we were in violation of the deed restriction. So the agreement that we're working on is what's called an abrogation, whereby the town will end up selling the building to someone, whether it's Simone or someone who GSA finds through their public auction website. They are going to, if need be, if we can't come to a deal with Simone, act as our agent or broker, so to speak, advertise it on their website, sell the property. The price for the abrogation hasn't really been determined yet. We were trying to get them to agree to a $1.4 million appraisal price that had been given to us back in 2018, I believe, at some point. But ARC, on that phone conference that we had, advised they did not want to remain in the property, or they weren't looking to remain in the building. However, they needed time before they could get out, approximately a year and a half or so. So the agreement, and GSA was agreeable to this, to allow ARC to stay in. And as George was saying, we'll continue to collect the rent, put it in escrow. And ultimately, when the property is sold, sometime, I guess, in not 2021, not 2022, but the beginning of 2023, I guess. Again, whether it's to Simone or whether or not it's to somebody else, all the money in escrow will go towards the price of the building. It's going to remain in our name. We're going to actually sell the building. But the deed restriction, once the property is sold, will be lifted so that we can sell it to whoever it is that comes in to purchase it. They will not have to use it for law enforcement purposes any longer. They'll be able to use the property for whatever purpose they want. And the additional monies that are taken in for the sale of the building will go to the government. So the town won't be receiving any further revenue from the property.
Except for maintenance and things, they've agreed that we do some grass cutting and snow plowing, things like that. We'll be able to deduct some of that money out of
Yeah,
it.
right.
Right.
Yes, George. So they were pushing back on that a bit, but they seemingly have agreed to allow us, if need be, to use whatever proceeds that we're going to collect and put into escrow should any maintenance or repairs be required over the course of the next few years before the property is sold, to use that money rather than, taking from whether it's the general fund or some other source of town funds to pay for that. I told him, we're not looking to make any, needless repairs or maintenance. And I'll even, come to him to advise him of any repairs that need to be done and seek his consent first, to which he seemingly was on board with.
Okay, thank you. So this is just another issue that was kind of taking up a lot of time when I got in here. The next item on the agenda is something that troubles me deeply. The Catskill Aqueduct tap by KJ. So there was an MOU signed a few years ago, and now we are now starting to kind of get to the point where it's going to happen. So, Mike Weeks, you have been in touch with this engineering firm that's representing KJ, and you did a memo, or you wrote him a letter or a draft. You want to cover a little bit? Do you have those notes? If not, I do.
I don't have the letter in front of me, but I can give a brief synopsis of
Okay.
at least what the IMA says and what is currently proposed. So back in 2013, 2014, right, the town signed a intermunicipal agreement with Village of Curious to allow them to share the Catskill Aqueduct tap that the town owns at Riley Road. So this would be the source of Catskill Aqueduct water that would then transfer through the pipeline that they have been in process of constructing for several years. That'll run down Riley Road through Vales Gate and down 32. So this tap will, back when the intermunicipal agreement was first written, it through, I believe, discussions with the town, the village, and New York City DEP, there were questions on exactly how the new tap would be constructed, whether what's existing would be rebuilt to facilitate both the town and the village, or whether a brand new, what they would call bottom tap, would be built. So the agreement was relatively vague in terms of exactly what was proposed. So what our office has reviewed, and this is our second review of the information. I think the first set of plans came to us last fall. And what's proposed is a connection to our tap. The tap will be completely replaced with a new. So what we have is a siphon that comes out of the top of the aqueduct. So they'll replace that siphon tube that goes down into the aqueduct, and they'll replace what's called the vacuum priming system, which actually allows us to start and keep the siphon. That'll be replaced with a larger system. And then that line will basically tee off. We'll have the line that goes into our Riley Road filter plant, and then they'll have a line that runs across the Riley Road property out to Riley Road and ultimately connects to their line. So that's the kind of the gist of what's proposed. We've done a couple reviews. Right now, I believe it is their hope to construct those improvements during the next Catskill Aqueduct shutdown, which would be in October of this year, October 21. we have quite a few reservations regarding the timing of that, the coordination of that, making sure that whatever their construction operations will be don't impact our ability to operate the plant. So that was a lot of the detail from our technical letter.
Well, the one thing that troubled me most was the aqueduct shutdown was for 10 weeks. And these guys are talking that best case scenario, they need 12 weeks to do the tap. So we really have to get that narrowed down. And I think that was in your correspondence to these engineers, Mike.
Yes.
So that is something that I really, really, really am concerned about. So we
George,
really, go ahead.
was there any further discussion with them going down to Butter Hill, selling water down there? I know we talked about it originally.
Yeah, we did, but they didn't have any interest at all. That would be the simplest thing of all, but no, they had no interest. Listen, they almost got that Riley Road plant, as some of you know. So now, if that tap's going to take, they're talking about best case 12 weeks. That's 2 weeks more than the shutdown. And then what if something goes wrong?
Yeah, Steve, we had a meeting with them back, probably in the spring, George, April maybe. That was really our only communication with them over this, at least
Right.
recent communication. And we did discuss that with them.
Mhm.
I think their reservation about doing that is their environmental review. They did I think a full environmental impact statement for this project. That would require modification if they were to change the routing, change where they were taking the water from. That would require a new secra for them, which I think they were not interested in that kind of taking up that kind of time.
And that's in what Stephen was asking about. But I can't imagine what's going to go on. And are they still going down through Five Corners?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that too, because we had meetings talking about them trying to go down Holleran, and it sounds like it lines up with what Mike's saying. It changes their plan and their engineering, and they were going to try to see. And my other question is, what would they do if they couldn't jump on ours? I guess they'd have to tie right into the actual aqueduct. Is that how that works?
Well, yeah, so in terms of the pipeline, my understanding is, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but I believe they put out to bid 2 separate contracts last fall for the balance of the water main work. One was kind of up to Bales Gate, and the other was from Bales Gate up to Riley Road. And I understand they may have awarded that one contract, but I don't know that for certain. And then, in terms of how they're going to connect, I'm not sure that New York City DEP would allow them to make a separate independent tap. I don't know that for certain either, but that's more speculation on my part. I think DEP probably wanted them to share a tap with somebody. I'm sure their DEP's not interested in more penetrations into their aqueduct.
Yeah, I think the bigger issue you're going to run into.
John DeGito, you got something to say to that?
Well, just so you know, I mean, the Catskill Aqueduct, probably about, a little less than a quarter of a mile past the Riley Road filter plant, drops down into a what's called the Moodna downtake. And from that point, it drops down to almost 1,500 feet as it drops to begin its traverse underneath the Hudson River. So one of the reasons why KJ wants to go all the way to the Riley Road filter plant is because that's about the last access point to the Catskill Aqueduct in Orange County. So there would be no other point really where they could access it. So that's why that was, our tap on the Catskill Aqueduct at the Riley Road filter plant is the last tap on the Catskill Aqueduct on the west side of the Hudson River. So that's where this came about, either Cornwall, their tap is right next to ours. So there's Cornwall, then there's our tap at the Riley Road plant. And, KJ was looking in that area to either make their own tap or this idea of a new tap that we could share together or sharing our tap. That's where all those discussions took place. Just so you know, one of my big concerns, aside from the tap itself and sharing the tap, is the construction of this pipeline to get to that Riley Road filter plant. Riley Road is a very, very congested road underneath the blacktop, and they're proposing winding a 24-inch ductile iron main down Riley Road. And Riley Road already consists of a 24-inch transmission line that comes from our Riley Road plant, two 12-inch water mains that go from the Riley Road plant almost all the way to the town of Cornwall town line as you head down towards 94. Town of Cornwall has their water main from their tap that runs down Riley Road, and we have a sewer main that runs down Riley Road. So you have all of that that's already existing there, and now you're going to try and snake a 24-inch ductile iron main. The size of your excavation for a 24-inch main has to be at least 4 feet wide. I just am really concerned about that construction activity.
Well, John, these concerns had to be back then too, right? Because this is nothing new under this blacktop. This has been there for a long time.
No, these concerns. So go back
didn't sneak up on us.
Go back to day one, Steve.
I think it was approved 20 years ago.
They're well aware of what's in the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're stuck.
I get it. I get it.
So let me just state the obvious. They are in need for a lot of water out in KJ. Myself and the town board is concerned with the town residents. So we really need to kind of closely watch what's going on out here. So I just wanted all of you to understand what I'm looking at day in, day out with these people. Meaning the people want to tap in, whether it's their engineering firm or somebody else. But when I see these things about the best case scenario is going to be two weeks longer than the shutdown will be, I get very concerned. So I just wanted to put it out on the table so all the board members know exactly what we're struggling with in here with this water issue and this tap. So I appreciate Mike and John kind of catching everybody up to date on what we've been doing here for the last 14 months. Next item on the agenda is this application for solicitor's permit, and I think I sent everybody a note that we raised the fee to $2,000 for 6 months, and this Mr. Dingeling has agreed to pay $2,000. So as I said in my note to the town board members, I guess he is willing to pay the $2,000. That takes my argument away trying to protect the local businesses because they're paying taxes. So now he's going to pay $2,000. So this will be on the agenda for Wednesday. Next item on the agenda is we have a public hearing for this hazardous mitigation plan. And this boils down simply to if we don't have this plan in place and we need to get some help from FEMA, we wouldn't get any help in the way of money. So we had to spend about $19,000 to get this done. We'll have a public hearing on it, hopefully adopt the plan. And then if we do get in trouble with FEMA, we'll be able to file and get some help from the federal government. Last item on the agenda is I sent everybody a copy of the letter that we've received from the Valesgate Fire Company. I think it came from, Frank Pieri. So there's a note from Jack. Did I attach the note from Jack to the board members? Anybody remember seeing this? Anyway, this is what Jack said. Surprise. Number 2, separate and district taxing authority like the town. In other words, he's saying they tax residents. Requests for grants and aid should be directed to state and federal elected officials and available programs. Number 3, serves a large portion of the town, but not all of the town. There are 2 other fire districts in town that are contributing to the town tax base. And then he starts talking about the repeater building up on Snake Hill that Prosaic uses it too. So I guess the question is, do we want to make a donation to Vales Gate Fire Company for their new firehouse that they're building there? And I guess Jack's point is that way the taxpayer money comes from other people who are not in that fire district. So why doesn't each town board member maybe send me an email, tell me what your thoughts are on this, and then we'll go from there? Okay. Okay, that's the end of that meeting, and I just want to apologize again to the public. We had some IT problems with the Facebook feed that we will correct on for the town board meeting, but this will be posted on our website and our Facebook site, and you can kind of review it. And I apologize again. So we'll take everybody off with the town board, Patrick. Thank you for coming. Those of you who came, Jack and Doreen, Mike Weeks, John Agito.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.